Retro anime. How did we find it? How does it hold up? Unpacking the ins and outs of being an old school nerd and proving that 80s kids can't remember a damn thing right. These are the mindless midlife musings of the anime nerd.
Welcome to Mindless Midlife Musings of the Anime Nerd. I'm Rick, and I'm joined by the rest of our panel, Vic, Brian, and Lynette. How's it going, everyone?
What it do?
Well, today we take a look at another post-apocalyptic sci-fi world as we emigrate to Olympus with Deunan and Briareos in Masamune Shirow's Appleseed. Appleseed is a Japanese cyberpunk-style OVA adaptation of the manga of the same name, created by Masamune Shirow. The anime takes place in a non-determined post-World War III future. The anime was produced by Gainax in 1988, and apparently, I can't say for sure, but apparently it departs greatly from the manga storyline. I never read the manga, don't intend on picking it up anytime soon, so we're just going with what we got. I'm not going to try and hold that against it. It was originally released by US Renditions. This probably a year after it came out, I'm guessing. That's the version I saw originally.
Yes.
And then Manga Entertainment re-released it like a few years later, and they chose to do a dub with their release, which I think I can only describe as maddening. And I never saw it before I started. So for this rewatch, I started it in English, got really frustrated, and then switched it over to Japanese. Yeah, it's just I don't know, is a thing. So this is it's the sophomore outing for Masamune Shirow. I believe it's the sophomore outing because after this he did Dominion Tank Police, and then he got back around to Ghost in the Shell. And
where is it in line with Black Magic?
Black Magic is first.
Yeah, Black Magic is his freshman year, and then he did Appleseed as his sophomore outing. And then there was more Appleseed. So he did this one. I'm sorry, he did Black Magic, and then he did Appleseed. Then he did like Dominion Tank Police, and then he did more Appleseed. And eventually he got around to doing the Ghost in the Shell manga.
So exactly, do we know whether or not he ever received therapy?
It is unknown at this time if Shirow has ever sought therapy.
I don't know. It seems like he has major trust issues with tech.
It does. You know, it's kind of funny because there's this. I'm not making the correlation myself, but I've heard people make the correlation before, and I, for the most part, agree with it. Is that Americans in the West, we fear technology, and Japan and the East, they more embrace the advancements of technology. That's kind of an ironic statement. We're talking about a country that still uses fax machines, but when it comes to robots, like they're into it. And over here, we're like, nah, kill Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like we're not having that.
So that's a wonderful jumping off point. You know, it's like I'm going to draw the thing I'm most terrified of, and you know he does again wonderful imagery in this one. I think he does a great job of blending current technology as well as futuristic tech, except for bunny ears.
Don't be hating on Briareos, all right?
I love bunny ears.
He's got a reasoning for it.
What is the reasoning for it, Vic?
Okay, so this was just a quick dive. I didn't deep dive into it. But apparently, him and Deunan were a thing before the series even became a thing. And he survived the bombing just barely.
Okay.
Which is why he's in a full suit. It's like, I think they mentioned that it's been a while since, we've delayed this episode. But if I remember correctly, I think it was something like they managed to save the brain. That's the extent of it.
He's basically Alita, right? The only thing left is his very human brain, and then everything else is robot.
Correct.
Wait,
I think the coolest thing they did with him was I'm a cybernetic giant, but I dress like Hugh Hefner when I'm winding down.
Yeah, he's at home.
Hey, you know what? Just because you got a robot body doesn't mean your style changes, you know?
You can still expect, the late 70s, early 80s style of life.
And the bunny ears establish trust. How many people will come to him and tell him anything he wants to know Because he's got the bunny ears.
All he's got to
I
do is
would.
tilt his head and like twitch one of his little
Yeah,
bunny ear thing, and
just
everybody's
figure-
gonna be like, "Oh, you're adorable.
every
You're
secret
8
that I
feet
have.
tall and
Sure,
can
it's
kill me."
the fact that he weighs God knows how many tons, and he's like really tall that they're willing to tell him anything he wants.
Until you see that the bunny ears have eyes.
Well, I see. What's funny is, all right. So right off the bat, the first thing anybody who's never seen Appleseed and sits down to watch Appleseed, one of the first correlations they're going to make is to Chappie. If you ever saw that movie,
Right?
Mhm.
and Neil Blomkamp, the creator of that film, he credits Briareos with that idea. Like that was his inspiration for giving Chappie the bunny ears thing. And your first impulse is those are his ears, right? Because that's what they look like bunny ears. I mean, they don't necessarily say those are definitely his ears. It isn't until I think the last 10 minutes of the anime that you go, oh, those are his ears. He does use them ears later in the anime. So, but the whole time, they could have been freaking like sonar. It could have been like extra guns. Like it could have been anything. And
He's got the cameras. He's also got sensors in them.
Flag on the play. Flag on the play.
Right.
The first thing you see him do, one of the first things you see him do, is take the ear and have a camera, and it peeks around the corner.
which is cool as
That is like the best thing. Oh, see, I'm telling you, every time Briareos came on, I was like, bunny ears, I'm done. I don't need to watch anybody else.
So
guy's
this is the first of many Appleseed movies. There have been many. This is the only one that falls within our criteria for review. The next one out was in 2004, and then 2007 had another one. 2011 had another. 2014 had another one. There's been several of these. This is the only one that was traditionally animated. Every other Appleseed has been CG animation kind of thing.
Yeah, that goes to the show, so he went ham.
Yeah, and all subsequent Appleseed films, with the exception of the series titled Appleseed 13, were all directed by Shinji Aramaki of Mospita fame.
Yes,
which is a fun,
great mechanical artist.
Yeah, which is a fun little tidbit there for you, a little mindless musing, as it were. Now, this is the only traditionally animated one, so it holds a place in my heart because that's how I roll.
Just want to make sure we're saying traditionally animated versus CGI.
Right, versus CGI. And I mean, it's not discount the quality of the following films. Some of them were brilliant. It's just that, I'm an animation snob, and for me, people doing that by hand, that's where it's at. But to jump into the story a little bit, it starts out with Flea.
Could not fly. Flea could not fly.
Leia could not fly. And it's sad because this this whole thing takes place in a fictional city of the experimental city of Olympus. And there's a lot of references to deities. Flea being one of them. The LR juxtaposition that happens with Japanese translations. She's obviously a reference to Freya, Norse goddess. And she obviously takes a swan dive. And for me, like, that happens because, it's just like any other 80s film. It's like, all right, well, somebody themselves out some. It takes a very long time for that story to pay off. That's all I'm saying.
Right?
Yes.
And what's funny about besides Olympus and Flea, it's like Briareos, his name is actually based off a character named Briareus, one of the Hecatoncheires. I can't pronounce that word.
The 100
giants of Greek mythology.
Yeah. There's a ton of this stuff, right? There's Olympus is the city. Deunan is another character whose name is derived from another. Gaia is the computer system, which is a reference to a different type of. And Charon is one of the characters in the story, who is the ferryman to the underworld. So there's a lot of references in the titles, in the names.
Lots.
Yeah, to mythologies of past.
Tartarus was the.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Tartarus, the city of Tartarus. So it's really, really interesting choice. I kind of appreciated it because it was almost like a little fun nod, since I was a little bit of a mythology geek back in the day. But here we are. It's post World War III. Flea is taking a dive, and Omni Consumer Products, General Management Control Office, was formed to rebuild the world. They developed this experimental city of Olympus. And at this point, the opening crawl's happening, and they introduce the concept of biodroids. Initially, I was like, okay, so biodroids are cyborgs. But they're not. They're not cyborgs. They're androids. So biodroids are androids. Like, think Vision. Then there's people like Briareos who are cyborgs, like Alita or RoboCop. Then there's humans. Unless you're Briareos and you still consider yourself human, even though you're a cyborg, we've already established you don't have to be human to be humane, right? It's kind of this interesting dynamic, and I don't know if it's intentional because I never read the manga, but there's a lot of like racial undertones to be had here. I really wish they would have played with a little more. There's some definite undertones regarding immigration and othering and things like, mistreatment of immigrants and in human rights and all that. And I loved all that. I really did. I think my biggest problem with this was seemed to have a hard time finding which narrative it wanted to stick with.
I just think it was probably lack of time.
Yeah, no doubt. This definitely feels like stage 2 in Shirow's evolution as a storyteller. Black Magic's his freshman year, and then Appleseed's a sophomore outing, and then he's trying to tell a deeper story about what it means to be human, what it means to be free. But it's messier than Ghost in the Shell, is I think what I'm trying to get at. Ghost in the Shell is kind of like his magnum opus, and then this is like he hadn't quite fleshed it out.
His second draft. That's what it is.
Yeah, there you go. Second draft.
He did a regular Lotus Ward and role played this out yet.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
But it's something about when you listen to Callan, right? And Callan's talking to DW and how do you say her name?
Deunan?
Her. Sure. Right.
You can call her blonde. You can call her Blondie. I'll make your life easier. Call her Blondie.
Blondie. I actually feel better about that. I feel better about myself.
There you go.
So
go with it.
When Callan's talking to Blondie and Briareos at the cemetery, right? And he's basically talking about how Freya.
Let's say Freya. It's Flea. It's Flea in the translation. It's Flea in the dub. And the reason they did that is because it's written as Flea things. So like they had to lean into it. They didn't. So but it's Freya.
So Flea, and he's talking about why she herself, or why why she herself. If I was there, I'm like, you kind of sound like the terrorist that we just
like low key. This sounds real terroristy. I'm just saying.
Not just terroristy. I mean, I could have sworn I just heard what these people said, And there's that trope that comes back to where one of the protagonists or even the somebody who's supposed to be good starts speaking the thoughts of the antagonist. Somebody who's the perfect example of this is Global from Super Dimensional Fortress Macross, right? Whenever something was happening, and like, remember when we were talking about the guy with the worst mustache ever? Is coming to talk to him, and he's telling him something, and his deep inside thought is saying what they really mean is that, he gives you the skill of what they're trying to say. It's like a reverse exposition.
It's like you're showing your hand before the story's giving you a chance or something.
Yeah, it's kind of like them saying, hey, they may be too stupid to figure out what we're trying to say, so we're going to have the good guy who we have already instilled trust in kind of tell them what we mean. It's just interesting how they do that.
I agree. I agree. And we'll say that I'm a little harsher on Deunan and Briareos with the trust thing, just because, like, I don't know, man. Deunan wants to transfer to special investigations to, and I quote, find that bastard and kill him. Sweetie, I don't think you know how police work is supposed to go. It's not.
Just sounds more like an assassin.
Right? Like, I mean, it's called investigations. Like, it's in the name. Anyway.
Investigations, murder, all the same. Fine.
They did it first, so I think good.
They started it? Are
Yeah,
you
they
really?
started it.
Are you, have we narrowed it down to the stop touching me? He's on my
Right.
side.
There's this line early on. I think it's in the. I don't remember if it's in the crawl or if it was said by a character. Something about underestimating the eternal human desire for absolute freedom. And that line didn't mean as much to me at the beginning as it did by the end. By the end, it had a lot more weight to me, and I kind of understood it more. But as the story plays out, you find out that the entire city is run by androids, by bioroids. Like they're in charge of everything. And the only humans in the city are people who've been permitted to immigrate to the city. And you find this out as they're throwing a party for Hitomi. They're I don't know, social worker, immigration officer. That's the best thing I can come up with for her. They're all her friends because she helped them get in. It took me way longer to realize that she was an android as well than it should have. I should have put two and two together sooner, but what can I tell you? I did like
android at all.
Right? No, she was great because she was drunk off her. It was really funny.
Right. like she didn't. I don't think I watched it. I caught on to that until the second time I watched it. And I was like, hold on, why do they want her? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, like why? What is this social worker gonna do? And then you start to kind of okay. So I gotta take a beat here and talk about the dub for this. I mentioned earlier that it was not great. It's really bad. Like it's really bad. I don't know. What did you watch it dubbed or subbed?
Dubbed.
Dubbed. And I assume you watched it dubbed.
I'm dubbed.
Okay,
I am 100% subbed.
So I started it, and then the technician called Briareos bully, the dub. And I realized that Deunan immediately after he comes to talk to her, and she calls him Briareos, and figured it out. What it was is this was because they literally translated it from the Japanese pronunciation, which is like Briareos. So they call him Briareos. Like that's unbearable for me. I couldn't. It drove me crazy. It is terrible. And manga did this whole thing. I hated. They did this to Street Fighter 2, the anime when we watched it, and I hated. They did it to this too. Manga had a history of doing this. They did the whole let's add swearing to make this edgier.
Yeah.
And then they changed entire segments of dialogue. So entire segments of dialogue were changed. There's a scene where Briareos is hooked up to the machine and they're pulling all the footage from the arrest that they did in the beginning. And he's talking to the technician, and then he goes to talk to Deunan, who's typing away on her laptop computer thing, her immensely huge CRT-based futuristic computer. And they're talking about Tomi, and they're talking about her party and how they're going to go to that. And in the dub, he's and swearing up a storm about this AJ Sebastian terrorist thing. And it was very disjointed for me because I kind of like sometimes I'll watch it in English with the subtitles on, sometimes I'll watch it Japanese. So at that point, I was watching in English with the subtitles on. And I'm like, wow, they have deviated immensely.
So that's the problem. That's the difference between translating and localization.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, that's a huge thing like online right now. It's like, do you do it accurately where you may lose some people, or you do however the heck you want?
Did it however the heck they wanted.
Yeah, and back then it was pretty much we're localizing it. It's they figured that we couldn't handle it.
So it bugged me.
He did have bunny ears.
He did.
He was very cuddly looking. So they
very
had to
cuddly,
make him what?
In a robotic way.
Cuddly
In a robotic
1-ton
way.
robot.
He's got like the cute ears. He's cuteness overload with the ears. So they were like, we got to make him tough.
So yeah, it was at this point that I switched it off to Japanese because I was like, wow, they're just they give no. I'm gonna just switch this over. And so at that point, I switched over.
They did that. He like she said she was cute, so we had to turn him from the jack-o'-lantern.
Yeah, right.
Jackalope. They turned him to jackalope. It was either going to be that or the triple cabra, so I didn't know which one we wanted.
Ooh, quick mid-episode update.
What's up?
Briareos has 25% of his body is still human.
Well, good. That's important to note because later on I have a comment about that. It's
Oh, no.
relevant.
You have to lay out.
It's relevant to what happens on screen. So,
Okay.
film it felt like it was trying to tell a lot of different stories. What it meant to be human, about immigration and xenophobia, about the illusion of a utopia, police militarization. Like there is a ton of that, and he touches on that again in Dominion Tank Police, the militarization of the police force. This is hardcore militarization of the police. The SWAT team in this is basically the Green Berets. It's insane.
No, I tactics wise, I will say, there's a clean sniper shot. Clean sniper shot. The first one when he's about to talk to somebody and boom. Yeah. But I don't really see it, and I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm used to that type of it's not atmosphere. It's not those type of mechanics, or
you're just a little closer to it than we are.
Yeah, I guess I'm closer to it, but honestly speaking, they could have went a lot further. You know?
Oh yeah, would you wait till we cover Tank Police?
You know, but there are tactics like that. You do see that your law enforcement do spend time coming up with that. I didn't think it was as militaristic as it could. Maybe based upon the time being the 90s, possibly. And I think that's probably my problem. I think that's where it is. Based upon the 90s.
Now they're tame compared to
right.
I don't know. It's to me there was an alarm. I get that it's future tech. And I wouldn't have even noticed it if it hadn't been for watching all of Shirow's portfolio. Having seen Black Magic M66, which showed a more traditional, it was a military story, then watching this one where they're supposed to be police, and it certainly felt more like the army, than watching like Tank Police, which is, I want to say, like a comedic push into that. They literally have tanks and they're cops. And then there's, you go into Ghost in the Shell where it's just next level. Even then they're under budget, if I remember correctly.
Like, it's a difference between, say, military, say police one level, then you have military the next level, and then you have agency. You know what I'm saying? Where agency brings into counterintelligence and terrorism and just tactics of stuff. I could see that.
No, it was just the vibe I got, and as I
will say, they brought out the heavy hitters pretty quick. I mean, those guys that broke through the door, they met with a nice machine gun behind a desk.
That was funny. I laughed my ass off. They kicked the door in, and there's a dude like on the ground with a fucking machine. Like they just that had me rolling.
But yeah, I saw that they come out pretty heavy. Like they had people in armored suits that I think were androids. They had like armored vehicles.
Here's my question on that to everybody.
But I don't think it was extreme. I think it was just like the standard.
Okay, but Olympus is a utopian city created by androids, run by androids,
and they're packing heavy heat.
Populated by, I think if I remember correctly, 80% of the residents in the city are androids. They're conditioned to live in Olympus without aggression, without anger towards humans, without any of this. They still needed a SWAT team. They still needed. It's supposed to be a utopian city that's 20% human, and they still needed massive militaristic SWAT team to handle.
As you are just relaying, just we would need that many people. We would need an 80% workforce just to handle 20% of the population.
Hey, yeah, humanity sucks. Think about it.
That's why I said this film, like, it wants to answer things or wants to have a conversation about things, but I don't think Shirow was ready to have it. Like, he touched on things a little bit here and a little bit there, and I'm like, dude, you could have done a whole anime just about this, a whole other one just about this. And it felt like He threw a bunch of concepts in a blender.
But the thing about it is, if you really think about it, the things he was trying to say have actually played out in some of the greatest sci-fi trilogies ever. Like the whole concept of a program running sewer and water, something like that, that was basically brought out into the Matrix.
The floating multi-legged robot. When I first saw that,
giant
I was
Tachikoma.
like, yeah, when I first saw that, I was like, hey, that's the thing that plucks the people from the plants. Like,
no, but that's also like that is literally a giant spider tank.
Yeah, they're cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. It was one of those things. I'll keep going. I apologize for the. This has a lot of that future retro tech, which is always fun. It's like, we're working on the computer, and the computer's a CRT, and it's like in this
the terminals
or the So there's a lot of that really fun. Everybody still has like landlines. That was kind of fun. English,
late 70s, early 80s, like design sense.
English was off on this a bunch. That was a lot of fun. The
Olympus
TV television station, and the Olympus
MOTER.
The Olympus Police Department.
Yes.
and then they misspelled Christopher on the cop that died. They misspelled his name on his own tombstone. That was sad.
Yeah.
They couldn't afford the O.
They didn't know about that.
They couldn't afford the extra letters. They're like, man, they charge by the letter. I don't know. So
not going to see this.
But I mean, it's a lot of that kind of fun stuff. But when you talk about this utopian concept, and you still need a heavily armed military police force, and you're like, sweetie, I don't think you know what utopias are supposed to be. I did like that in this utopia, you can own a power suit. Apparently, right. Deunan has one, and she. But I like the little dig that he made. She got it with a loan. Of course, like she was buying a car. Like, I need a power suit. I'm gonna head down to the bank, get myself a loan.
And the bank was like, sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, you're on
There's
SWAT?
A 90-day waiting period.
Cops are allowed to have, they're allowed to use, personal firearms at times, depending on the department. Why can't they have their own little personal power armor?
Do you want to use Amazon Prime for this?
You went to the local Walmart.
Right. Get that. Can I get Prime shipping with my power suit?
Power suit dropped off at your front door in 2 days flat.
Oh my god! So they did this thing in the dialogue. Again, this was something I found out later on my second attempt to watch through it. Athena, another Greek god, is the ginger, the redhead who's running the show. I don't find out her name till way later than I should have. But her hologram calls in Deunan and Briareos, which is a whole other thing. There's just before I get into that, Athena decides she's going to use immigrants who are on the police force because they can be easily manipulated to accomplish her goals. She brings them in, and she wants them to arrest AJ Sebastian, villain.
Arrest, kill him.
There you go. So in the Japanese dialogue, she very clearly says, you need to arrest him, and this needs to be clean. And then in the English, she flat out says he is not to be arrested. Like, you need to kill him. There's a dramatically different level of police work that is being requested.
Hey, movies like Lethal Weapon were a big thing at that time, so
it validated Blondie because that's what she wanted to do.
No. Anyway, there was a lot of that weird kind of. It really bugged me. There's a line that Deunan says in the dub that I was like, "What is this thing?" He says it really gets on my that she wouldn't see us face to face. Swear to God, Lynette, that's the line. In the Japanese version, she just says, "Too good to talk to directly to us humans, huh?" No. The English version, it really gets on her. So there's your new euphemism for you to use whenever something's bugging.
I can imagine her. If you play that out, no, man. Is she over there with a washcloth trying to dab it off? Like, can you give me some club soda, please? I gotta eat this off.
I foresee many people being sent to HR.
So about that moment, besides the dub being them, is that it's kind of an interesting take or an interesting moment for Deunan because it shows that she still thinks of Briareos as human. Like he's
Mhm.
human. There's only apparently 20% of him in there. To her,
25.
the whole like he's still human. I liked that. I thought that was really cool. It was nice that she doesn't see him as different because of the technology that is keeping him alive. I thought that was kind of neat. But
Mhm.
again, not something they touched on more. They really should. They could have delved into that because again,
I
too
think
many
we really need to
pieces.
take some time now and hypothesize about which part of his body is still 25%.
I don't want to
Right.
know.
All right. No. I'm gonna tell you because I'll skip ahead to my note for this. So there's this big action set piece in the end. I will get there, but there's a point where they're in a hallway and they're running through from lasers, and Briareos takes a hit in his kneecap, and he drops like a sack of potatoes. I'm like, are you? And there's blood. And I'm like, mother, are you kidding me? Of all the parts that you kept your fucking kneecaps. If you're a robot, the joints are the first thing you replace. That's the that goes bad first. Why would you keep those? Like that,
With
I'd just be
four
like, no,
knees, and you've seen them jump
about
like
leg.
from like high areas and everything.
Mother weighs 17 tons, and he's got human kneecaps that can be blown away. That's some bull. I'm sorry. I was like, what? What just happened? They took him out with a knee shot? He's RoboCop with bunny ears, and they took out his kneecap. That I threw my hands in the air at that point. That was the note I had. That's what I wanted to talk about because I couldn't believe. So apparently, it's just his brain and his knees. That's all that's left of him.
Well, I mean, they hint the other stuff too, because the other guys talk to him about dating. So
All right.
they don't
That's not
say
the
it
key.
outright. They do hint to
Look,
him
look, come
about
on.
like, have you
All you
dated? You've gone out, blah 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 blah. So
brain, the second head.
Brain,
So-
second brain, and knees.
So
That's all you
that's
need.
what we're going with. Briareos' anatomy is brain and knees. Like that's what we got.
Kind of like head,
The
knees, and toes, but
consensus here.
not exactly.
Mhm.
Like,
All right. We'll put
you
that
know
out
what?
to the internet. You can let us know what your breakdown and his percentages is.
So, you know, when I think about this, and whenever we're talking about somebody who's a cyborg, right? I immediately think about the greatest cyborg ever, Darth Vader, right?
Sure.
And I love that when you look at episode 3, you finally see the transformation from Anakin to Vader, right?
Right.
I would have loved to have seen what they went through to do, especially, and he's done this before. Like when he did the opening scene for Ghost in the Shell,
Mm-hmm.
you know, he did this before where you saw how she was made and stuff like that. That would have been a killer title scene to see
So
exactly.
yeah,
But this is the second draft, so he didn't realize how cool that would be
how
until
important it would have
his
been until
final
he got
draft.
there.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
as we're making this statement, we have actually seen something like that play out again. The remake of RoboCop.
Right. Right.
When they show you exactly how much is Robo and how much is Cop.
Yeah, that was impressive.
That was impressive.
For what it's worth, I actually rewatched RoboCop, and it's sort of just in tune with what we're doing here. I rewatched that newer RoboCop film, which I hated the first time I watched it, and I realized why I hated it was because I was expecting 1980s RoboCop.
Yeah.
When I came into it and I watched it for what it was, it's really good movie that talks a lot about what it means to be human, which is kind of cool. Like I enjoyed it a hell of a lot more this time around.
I enjoyed it in my first watch view of it.
I couldn't detach myself from the original.
That's the part.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it was, but anyway, I know I don't want to deviate into that, but it is relevant because Brian, you did bring it up. It is relevant in the how much of him is human aspect of it, and I am curious. Now there have been other anime, like we've discussed. There have been follow up films, and there are some films that sort of touch on what happened to Briareos early on, but never to the degree that I've seen. Never to the degree that you're asking for. I would love to see that too, like a schematic or some kind of breakdown that's like, here's meat, Here's a machine. Here's a little bit more meat. It would be
Can
interesting.
I ask another question? Can I ask another question?
Yeah, go for it.
So here we are having a conversation about the androids that are running the city. Right?
Yeah.
Would it have been awesome to have the conversation about the systems of those sentient to be able to keep Briareos alive?
Yeah, man. It's so... And again, I think that has to do with the sophomore outing. There really is a dialogue to be had here. Right? These are fully synthetic humans. Fully synthesized. Briareos gets jacked up and they put him in a robot body. Have a fully synthesized humanoid building machine. But they had to put Briareos in RoboCop.
Well, I think he came from the outside to Olympus already as a robot, so
Okay,
as a
so you're
cyborg.
saying he immigrated already that way.
Yes.
All right, cool.
He
I
was-
can get
he
behind
was-
that then.
He was version 1. Olympus was version 2, and he missed
I'm like,
the
I'd be
upgrade.
upgrading.
He missed the upgrade. He didn't upgrade yet.
Yeah, it's
He's still
Yeah.
paying off
Additions.
his original suit,
And you know what?
kind
Just
of like cell phones.
I'm not sure if
Just-
that's where you were going with it, Brian, but that's what I got. I'm sorry.
no, just having this conversation, right? And we start talking about how does it hold up now, right?
Sure. Yeah.
We speak about the immigration system all the time. At least hear about it, how broken it is, at least once a week here, you know, and we're constantly seeing it. But this is actually a real. I'm not saying it's not a real life, but they actually they have delegated the immigration policy to an android.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
To a series of androids. Hitomi's just one of
Yeah, a
several
series of
social workers. She doesn't, and I don't think, and sorry to cut you on that, I don't even think Hitomi knows fully what she's doing, at least in this version of the story. In this version of the story, she seems like ignorant of the fact that Athena and the other bioroids are letting humans in to use them. I feel like she thinks she's doing good social work. Like she's trying to genuinely help people that need a place to go. And then everybody else is just like, oh, cool, more bunnies.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. Did you get a different read on that?
No, so honestly speaking, she is in fact the lottery system.
Yeah, that's exactly what she is. Yeah, she's the Florida Lotto or whatever, the Mega Millions.
I mean, she's programmed to be positive, which means
Right.
so her perception of it is positive. It has to be, otherwise, she wouldn't be able to do her job.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Well,
It is-
again, dude, I would love a whole anime dedicated to that theme, very concept of the immigration of it all, because it is. That's probably the overarching, reaching tone of the whole film. Definitely about that.
Let's just. You would think that after World War III, the mandate would be we need to protect as much humanity as possible.
You would think that.
But that's not what it is.
This is a corporation.
Have you seen iRobot? That's how they they kept them in their homes and made
Right.
them not go anywhere because
Your
they
protection.
realized that the greatest threat to humanity is humanity. So that's why it's 80% biodroid, android, and only 20% people.
So,
It's a very, very sad way to think about it, though.
but I guess where it starts to fall apart for me is we are looking for just that. It doesn't feel like the humanity was ever. It doesn't even feel like it's a commodity. If anything, it feels like it's more of a virus than anything.
Without a doubt. Are you talking about the way that this anime represents it, or the way that these bioroids think of them? Absolutely.
Well, so Athena.
Hey, we said it earlier. Humanity sucks.
But Athena is also a bioroid, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, she's a bioroid.
So I just keep on thinking about all the humans that are actually out there in the wasteland just suffering.
Right.
Well, I think that's the main question for this anime, though, is are they really suffering? Or is it
better?
Olympus
Is the
that's
grass
suffering?
greener? Yeah.
Yeah, which one is greener? Each one has green grass because there's piles of crap underneath the thing. It's just a
So true.
matter of what type of crap you're willing to smell.
The city was built by a corporation.
Hmm.
Let's remember that it's in the opening crawl. That's why I made the joke about Omni Consumer Products. But it is a corporation creates this city to be a utopia. This is Amazon's concept of what utopia is, right? They've filled it with robots. They're gonna let a couple people in, through a lottery system, and honestly, they're just gonna use those people to test things.
So what
And
you're saying is that Bezos owes Masamune Shirow some money.
Hmm.
that's
Royalties.
basically it. So it's kind of later in this anime. It takes a long time to get to this, but Shellon's whatever his name, Sharon. I call him Sharon. Motivations become more clear, and they show a flashback to how he's treated like a second-class citizen because he's a minority, he's an immigrant. Now his human rights are violated after his wife commits. They're like probing his brain and stealing his thoughts and all these horrible things that happen to him. He doesn't matter because he's a second-class citizen, and that's when the immigration story really landed. It took a long time for that to set.
Hmm.
And when they really showed it from that perspective, it was kind of like at that point that I'm like, well, I'm on his side now. So everybody
It's like you
else,
get where he's coming from.
right? Like I felt, I'm like, yeah, well, I mean, I'm with him. He's got me. Like I'm with him on this one. Those motivations become clear, and the idea about what he's doing it makes a lot more sense. It's again, they could have spent more time talking about that. They had to get to the action set piece. This is an anime. We only had like what, an hour, 2 hours. Concept is that there's this terrorist organization is going to steal Hitomi, which at this point I'm like, why her? Still, like, why her? Right? And then they kind of like word salad it, how they've shut down all these terminal access points, but they've got Hitomi, and she can access a terminal to shut down Gaia.
Hmm.
I'm like, okay, the social worker can shut down Gaia. The social worker can break the city. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
You've
Yep, that's what I
taken
understood too.
the social worker can break the entire city. If you take her to an island in the middle of a river at a park and you plug her into the statue, she can shut down the entire city.
Well, it proves one thing.
Robots don't know anything about infrastructure planning.
Exactly. even bioroids can't properly plan a city.
I mean, Jesus.
It's not easy.
I really don't think they thought that one through. It was fascinating. I did like, and again, this circles one of the many narratives they're trying to tell. Did like how Sharon convinces Hitomi to help him. They don't really show how he does it, but they show him start to talk to her about it. And she ultimately decides to help him, proving to me that she's probably more human than anyone in the whole city. Because she hears his plight and she gets it. And she's like, oh my God, you're right. We suck. We have to shut this down. So it was kind of cool. It didn't get the time it deserved. That's kind of a big deal.
Yeah, it feels like this could have been like 2 or 3 movies just for this specific story.
Hmm.
Yeah, it really does.
She went against her programming, really,
Yeah,
because she
like,
was supposed to bring people into Utopia, and then after talking with him, she was like, "Shut it down, shut it all down."
Yeah, she's
And
like, F it, shut it all down. And there's a level of sentience there to be discussed, right? Because they're all programmed to not be aggressive and they're programmed not to be angry. But that movement, that moment of pure humanity, pure empathy from this bioroid was going to lead to human casualties. So you want to Isaac Asimov that to define her programming out of pure empathy was still going to lead to defying her programming more,
Mhm.
So it was kind of profound. It made me really respect Hitomi a little bit. And then these they went and they flipped it around and they made it stupid. Reduced Hitomi's empathy to a girl being. I was like, you can't. Why would you do that? It's literally after all the goes down and they're sitting down with Hitomi and they're having the little Scooby-Doo laugh at the end of the thing, making fun of her because they said they basically accused her of helping him because he was cute, and that was it. I'm like, dude, you've just reduced this girl who's more human than all y'all to a joke. pissed me off. It was
Yeah.
And they did that.
he did that, yeah.
Yes.
Deunan and Briareos are making fun of her for being more human than they are.
Masha was
Wait, what?
Shirow, Masamune Shirow. That's what you were trying to say.
Yeah,
Speak,
yeah.
Brian.
He did that.
Okay, look. So I don't know, right? It's based on the manga. Does that mean this happened in the manga? I don't know. I have a feeling it didn't because it feels very out of character. It feels like he was telling a whole different story.
Yeah, I feel like an editor or a PR person went, "Oh, you're a bit heavy here. We don't want to have that heaviness coming in. Got to lighten it up a bit."
Yeah.
But because you notice that same type of translation about humanity and empathy really gets blasted in your face when he goes to Ghost in the Shell. So it was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
when it ended that way, I was like, "Oh, prequel. I sense prequel." And then they destroyed it with that comment. And I was like,
They shot that down. They kneecapped it like Briareos. So overall, overall, Sharon was right. This whole argument, he was right. The humans aren't immigrated to Olympus out of empathy or human rights, but out of a desire to experiment on them, to treat them like guinea pigs. And Athena basically said as much, flat out right. So this moment by Hitomi, this ultimate, showing of empathy and understanding from Bioroid being reduced to a joke was really frustrating for me.
But the irony is it was done by a human.
Again?
That's right.
Right? So the irony is she got shamed for having feelings, having girly feelings by a human.
Yeah, because Dunan's a f***ing idiot.
It's like, how dare you feel?
And she doesn't respect Hitomi at all. Like, clearly.
I have not. Once again, he has got us having an existential crisis.
We altering your perceptions, Brian.
We have a department to fix that.
I knew it.
Oh man, I don't. So it's so much to be said about Appleseed. Now, there's so much to be said about Appleseed as a whole.
That's a very good segue to my next question for you.
Go ahead.
Are we going to do the naming?
Dude, we have to because I don't know what the Appleseed means. Does anybody?
Same. Nope.
All right.
I never looked into it.
Okay, go ahead, Brian. What you got one?
I do, and it's about to fuck you up.
All right, go ahead.
The apple is by far one of the most, especially when we're talking about one of the most famous fruits of ever. Would you agree with that statement?
Without a doubt.
You
Sure.
think that
It is definitely the best of fruits, especially in pie form.
some people will say that apple is probably the perfect fruit. However, the apple seed is actually poisonous.
Well done.
In large amounts, yes.
Well done, sir.
And that's what we're talking about in regards to right now.
God damn it, Brian, you made perfect sense.
That's really, really actually very good. Props. Well done. Well done.
Mm-hmm.
So for this one, I actually think Appleseed fits.
You do? You think it's appropriate? I went for some.
Especially after the conversation that we just had.
I went for some bull. I went for Olympus Must Fall. That was like my lean in, but it doesn't even do it justice. Appleseed is, now that you've described it, I can't imagine it being called anything else.
I can't even compete. You win, Brian.
Yeah.
You win.
Good.
Yeah.
That was good. A+. Well done.
Long-time listener, Masamune Mukashi.
Masamune Shirow. Yeah.
Did you call him Kakashi?
Is not bothered by the fact that you messed up his name.
Somebody gets me.
Oh man.
Long-time listener.
Long time. Very long. He's a big fan. All right, so let's go ahead and wrap this up then. I don't know how to get into this anymore. It is a frustrating, interesting anime. Wants to tell three or four different types of stories about 3 or 4 different very important subject matters. Stories should be told about. I don't know that any of them landed, especially when they sabotage themselves. And I was entertained. It took a little longer to get there for me than I have to. It was very moved like molasses on a winter's day.
That was very potent.
And then it picked up, and once it started really digging into a little bit more about immigration of it and the empathy and the humanity, like I was like, okay, now like the last half I loved until the very last bit where they did Tomi's character over. But I do think it's worth checking out. I think that if you're a fan of Masamune Shirow, this is a good one to watch. If only because it's one of the only ones that's hand drawn from the Appleseed franchise, so it retains a little bit of Shirow's DNA and his visual styling, as it were. I don't know that it's better story wise. In fact, I'll say it outright. Some of the CG ones are infinitely better story driven pieces, but it stands alone as a unique experience, especially from the late 80s. Very interesting stuff. So I recommend that you check it out if you haven't had a chance. We didn't ruin it all for you with the Hitomi thing. My 2 cents. I'm gonna hand it over to you, Lynette. What do you think about Appleseed? Before you start, had you ever seen it before?
Oh, you guys are giving me a lot of first animes. I'm telling you,
Right. Rock and
it's
roll.
the best. It's the best ever. I enjoyed it. I felt like it was one of those um they're dipping their toes in certain pools, right? They had different topics that they wanted to talk about. They stuck their foot in one and went, "Oh, that's a little too deep. Let's step back." They stuck their foot in another one. They said, "Oh, that's a hot topic. Let's go back." And they just kept doing it, and then they found one that they're like, "Okay, we can go with this." And then they went, "Oh, that's a little dark. Let's put some humor at the end." That really wasn't humor and kind of just destroyed the whole story. But
Yeah.
I found that, I mean, one, I could watch it twice. That's a
That
plus for them.
is telling.
Yeah, two, I saw a lot of future movies in them, like the RoboCop, Matrix, everything. And after watching Ghost in the Shell, I could kind of see where his thoughts were coming from. I was like, so that's how he grew into that movie. Because I honestly don't think Ghost in the Shell would have been so mind altering if he hadn't started with these drafts and put them out there to see how they went. So definitely would recommend it if anybody's a Ghost in the Shell fan. Check it out, see how it was born, because I feel like that's how it was.
Yeah, and you can really feel his evolution as a storyteller.
Yeah.
You watch these kind of in order is pretty interesting.
I do like the shout out to M66 in the
Yeah,
very
that's right.
beginning.
There was a shout out to M66 in this. Oh man, Brian, how do you feel about Appleseed now that we've gotten a chance to talk about it?
I'm about to our world up again. So, post-apocalyptic, rebuilding a city, turning into utopia. It feels like it was a love letter to World War II.
All
After
right,
the bomb.
cuts different, but I get it. Yeah, I very much get it.
And not just that, but as Japan is by far one of the greatest places on Earth. Tokyo. Just Japan itself. Hell, Vic, he's going to be spending 2 months over there.
I wish.
I think he's just gonna stay. He's gonna let the visa expire and the Bioroids experiment on him.
Just forget to come home.
So we look at this in just one of the biggest themes that we were talking about is immigration, right? And it's very easy for us to tackle immigration from everybody come over to America. This is really putting immigration as the forefront. It doesn't matter where you are coming from. If you are immigrating into some place, you are going to be looked down, based on the native people on there, regardless of whether or not they are androids, synthetic, humans, or anything. So it really, for me, as we are still having this conversation today, it stands up. I feel that as an adult, I'm able to appreciate the just the difficulties of what this man had to think about just to get this little version out. Man, I hope he took self care because I would hate to find him on the bad side of humanity. I would hate to find it. I pray to God that if he ever starts his campaign to run for emperor of Japan, they.
I'm pretty sure it's not a democracy. So I don't think they elect them that way. So would you say, Vic, before I get to you, I'll pose a question. Do you think that specifically for the three of us, when we watched this originally, do you feel like this message landed differently back when we were younger?
No, because when we were younger, we were stupid.
Well, like for me, this was a science fiction action film when I was a teenager.
Yes.
And to watch it now, it hit very differently. Like Brian, you said, the stories, the policies on immigration and human rights violations and things like that, and the xenophobia of it all, like that hit me far more than any of the sci-fi action in this time around.
Yeah, there's no way we would have picked up on any of that when we were younger.
I know.
Well, we weren't really, to be honest, we weren't really aware of that. We never really had conversations about like Dreamers and DACA.
Right? Well, it wasn't even a thing, right?
Not only that, but as much of a melting pot as Miami is, you really don't understand the definition of what immigration really is. You really just see.
So, coming from an immigrant family, my situation being unique in that we're Cubans, so policies were in place to allow them to immigrate from Cuba and come here and things like that. So, a little different, but Cubans had the opportunity to sort of make Miami their version of Olympus, right? They kind of, took over, set up shop, and Hialeah, Miami is known Cuban town. So it's it's not something that ever would have landed with me at that age when I watched it. And now, having been more worldly, traveled a bit, lived in different cities and seen paid more attention to immigration policy and as to how it affects other Latinos, it hit a lot harder this time around for me, which was something that I did not expect. I was like, we're gonna watch more robots do crazy stuff. So that's why I liked it so much this time around, is because I liked it for a completely different reason.
And I love that that's something that we're able to explore when we're doing videos like this. Something that we thought would have been pretty cool at first is either going to be pretty cool for a different reason, or we're going to realize that, maybe this is a topic that requires a little bit more care. The biggest examples when we started talking about hentai and just cool devices. As a kid, cool devices would have been, oh my gosh, they're just going ham. And then you start seeing stuff and all that. And you're like, yo, we got to be careful. And I love stuff that makes me think about, you need to be careful when you're addressing these topics. Offense is another thing that we're coming, let's say this is the age of offense. And we got to be careful about what we say,
right.
Because
everybody has a pearl to clutch.
Right. We may think we're trying to be a joke. And right now, I want to take this time to apologize about the Emperor of Japan. Clearly, that was a joke. Don't cancel me and do not send. Yeah.
Good news. Eastern Twitter isn't known for canceling people. It's just Western Twitter. So you're good. They'll just chalk it up to plain old American ignorance, which we've got plenty of. We got plenty to go around. All right, Vic, you can close us out with this. How do you feel about Appleseed now after all these years and this coming at it again?
Well, first and foremost, I just want to say I love the fact that our last show was M66, which had the little Appleseed hint on the T-shirt at the end, and now we're talking about Appleseed, which is also, I enjoyed it. Of course, just like everything else we discussed, I enjoyed it now more as a sort of grown adult as opposed to younger me in the 90s. The story, you understood a lot. You noticed and understood a lot more of the underlying issues that the city had. A lot of the just the points that it was trying to make, or not really trying to make, but slightly hinting at. Is it perfect? No. I mean, it like I said earlier, it needed probably 2 or 3, full-length movies probably to get the story out properly. But it was it was the 80s. It was an OAV. OAVs were not massively huge at that time. So getting one done, the fact that the animation quality, it's like even the animation quality. I think Black Magic was actually animated better
100%.
than Appleseed. But I think Appleseed in the long run had a deeper story than Black Magic.
Also, yeah, totally agree
And
with you.
so overall, it's like you can't go wrong watching Appleseed. And if you want to watch them all back to back to back, more power to you.
There's a lot of Appleseed out there to be had.
Mm-hmm.
Poison. I don't know if we're meant to do that.
No, and I know quite a bit. I joked around, God knows, and I say, humanity pretty much wrecks everything, but it's true. And this show, I mean, Appleseed proved that. It's like, the definition of truly being free. And it's like, well, humanity wants to be able to do what we want, when we want, how we want, regardless if it's good or bad. And we have no problem resorting to violence in order to obtain that. And that then, the movie showed that in action. It's like they want to be free. We have no problem, shooting up places, blowing up places, stealing a giant tank. Humanity doesn't have the greatest track record to begin with, even in real life. So, but overall, it's like, yeah, it's a great watch. You should watch it.
This was the deep one.
Yeah, I think that there's something to be said about, and we have to, consider the fact too that we talked about when we first watched this, being so much younger, and where we were emotionally developed, developmentally and whatnot. And that when Masamune Shirow did this, he probably wasn't much older than we were. Like a lot of these Japanese manga artists and writers, they start very young. It's something to be. It's interesting how a person who was probably roughly our age had. I guess it's more like the outsider looking in kind of situation. Like you can see a situation when you're not stuck in it, and are able to comment on it in such an interesting way. Even if it didn't hit, even if I didn't interpret it properly until 45 years old.
How old is he?
I was literally just looking up. He's 61.
Okay, so he's a little bit older by a factor.
Yeah, he's old enough to be like a young parent of ours.
I feel so much better hearing that.
I feel better about that. Yeah, I do. Yeah. I feel a lot better about that now. Actually, I think about like Aramaki, right? Like Aramaki was like 17 and he makes Maspida, and I'm like, how old was Shirow when he was writing this?
Shirow was like our anime dad. It's like a lot of the older stuff that we watched. It was like it was him, yeah. And so he's like anime papa for us.
All right, I do feel a lot better about that. Thank you, Ben.
I feel a lot better.
To look it up too. I saw where you were going, and it's like I need to know.
Well, yeah, man. It's just
so he wasn't our age, but basically he was our babysitter.
No, he's old enough to be young dad.
He was pushing 30 by the time we would have seen this.
And if you think about it, our experiences shaped how we viewed it, so his experience shaped how he wrote it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. He's only 16 years older than most of us.
It's a frustratingly disjointed, underrated film that couldn't get out of its own way.
Yeah.
Like I keep on thinking about to myself, man, 16, man, what was I thinking of when I was 16?
Not
you were in high school. You were thinking about high school things in the 90s.
Transforming motorcycles. Cool. Well, I mean, I think we need to wrap up. I'm pretty sure we went along on that one. It's fine. It's all good. We're good. So that's it, folks. That's going to do it for our show. So until next time, keep calm and remember that utopian super city infrastructure planning is a critically underrated industry and should really be reevaluated. That's what I'm giving you.
All this deep conversation, and you have
I can't go wrong with that.
Don't forget to vote for your city planner. That's what I'm telling you right now.
Don't worry, folks. We'll have much better outros later.
Very important. It's critical important. That, and I don't know, man. Make sure your green card's legit. I don't know. There's so many different things to touch on with this one.
All right.
You know what? Cancel your Olympus vacation plans. There you go. Keep calm and cancel your Olympus vacation plans.
Much better.
Okay. Or fly with Flea.
Fly with Flea. Keep calm and remember that an entire city was almost destroyed because an android got.
You've just been privy to the mindless midlife musings of the anime nerd, presented by Geek Grotto. Follow the podcast on Twitter at Geek Grotto. For show notes and corrections, or for general geeky fun, you can visit our website at geek-grotto.com. If you would like to sponsor the show, you can do so on the podcast's Red Circle host site, redcircle.com/shows/MMMAN. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast app, please like, follow, and subscribe.